The woman had never anticipated such an outcome. The merciless and savage ruler known as the Crimson King. He was, in truth, simply a man driven by an unhealthy obsession with his sister. He searched for his sister, who had disappeared. He humbled himself to the point of serving as the woman's contracted creature, simply to assume the role of a minor recruit within the military ranks. In the midst of this apocalypse, the military alone retained the ability to travel without restriction. The origin of everything lay there. The archaeologist unintentionally shattered an old, mystical seal during an excavation. A crimson haze spread across the city, engulfing everything in its path. Humans who breathed in the substance began to change in horrifying ways, losing their sanity before eventually succumbing to painful deaths. Other beings had transformed into monstrous shapes, their bodies warped and stained a menacing shade of red. Despite what really happened, the truth was hidden within the official reports. The remaining people scrambled desperately through the wreckage, driven by fear. 3 days earlier, the official broadcast had reassured the public, advising them to remain calm. Authorities instructed everyone to stay indoors and avoid leaving their homes. At that moment, the entire family found themselves gathered together within the confines of their vehicle. Without warning, a loud banging sounded against the window as someone outside yelled an urgent command to move the car right away. The military had arrived. Their father, clearly frustrated, grumbled that politicians were completely unreliable if they had already sent out the army. He questioned how anyone could still claim this was just a natural disaster. Just then, his sister moved in nearer to him and quietly confessed her fear, letting him know how frightened she felt. He tried to comfort her by pointing out that everyone was together, even as anxiety twisted in his chest. Still, the strange and overwhelming sounds unsettled him deeply. The character wondered about the mysterious red haze, trying to understand what it could be. Before he was able to complete his thought, a deafening noise erupted, tearing through the silence. In that instant, a whole car was launched high into the sky. Of all possible paths, it soared directly in their direction. He instinctively pressed his hand over his sister's head, urging her to duck out of harm's way. A thunderous crash echoed as their car slammed into the other. The two vehicles pressed tightly together, resembling the layers of a sandwich. He cried out in alarm, desperately calling out to his parents to see if they were safe. His father clenched his jaw in pain as he realized his leg was trapped. Even more frightening, the streets suddenly filled with the spine-chilling roar of a mysterious creature. The entire family shifted their attention in the direction of the unexpected noise, each of them silently wondering about its source. A gigantic beast roared in anger while soldiers fired a relentless barrage of bullets toward it. In the background, panicked civilians scrambled to escape, their voices filled with terror as they shouted warnings about the monster in their midst. Their father shouted urgently, ordering everyone to leave the car immediately. He swung his leg with force, sending the door flying open. He led his daughter outside alongside him. He hurried over and flung open the passenger door. Their mother's voice rang out in panic, telling him to take his sister and escape while leaving the rest behind. The thought of leaving his family behind tore at him. He couldn't do it. Determined, he promised himself that he would save them all. Overwhelmed by fear, his sister let out a desperate cry for help, but the moment the words escaped her lips, she understood her error and quickly pressed her hands over her mouth to silence herself. Their mother's tears streamed down her face as she cried out once more, urging them to leave. Both parents managed to smile despite the tears streaming down their faces, determination shining in their eyes. Their expressions silently urged their eldest son to act with maturity, take charge, and watch over. In the blink of an eye, an enormous force slammed down, sending both him and his sister flying upward. As he crashed onto the ground, his vision sharpened, revealing the creature at last. Looming before him stood a monstrous black beast, its form resembling a warped, oversized hound. Its abdomen was horrifically torn open, exposing jagged bones beneath the mangled flesh. In an instant, he lost his parents for good. The creature's eyes were locked directly onto him and his sister, its attention fully captured by their presence. Clenching his jaw, he pulled her along as he sprinted forward, yet she hesitated, reluctant to abandon their parents. All around them, blasts shattered the air, sending shockwaves through the chaos. The sky teemed with monstrous creatures soaring overhead, making the world appear as if it were facing its final hours. Even powerful military jets were easily knocked out of the sky. Animals and people were losing their sanity together. He was completely confused by the events unfolding around him. With nothing else he could do, he grasped his sister's hand and hurried onward, urging her to keep moving. Monstrous roars bounced off the buildings, filling the streets with their thunderous echoes. He guided her swiftly from one concealed place to the next, his fear of being discovered evident in his every movement. His thoughts sped through possible options. He considered the supermarket. It offered lots of hiding spots and enough resources to survive. Reaching it could mean they would endure long enough for help to come. A nearby creature could be seen slowly making its way away, disappearing into the distance. He exhaled deeply, feeling relief as he realized that it had disappeared. In the blink of an eye, his sister let out a piercing scream as red streaks began to crawl over her face. Fear gripped him instantly, confusion and worry mounting as he saw her distress. Hands flew to her chest, her breaths coming in desperate gasps, while she struggled to tell her brother that she felt terrible. He suddenly realized, to his terror, that identical scarlet strands were weaving their way over his own flesh. A sense of confusion washed over them as they wondered if the red mist swirling around had affected them after breathing in too much of it. He swiftly drenched a towel under running water. He then placed it firmly over his sister's nose and mouth. The very next instant, his mutation intensified even further. A wave of intense warmth rushed through his body, making it feel as though an unseen force was struggling to break free from within him. His sister's eyes filled with tears as terror gripped her, her voice trembling with concern for her brother's well-being. He clenched his jaw, struggling to reassure her that everything was under control. Inside, he battled fiercely, determined to resist the change threatening to overtake him. Despite its unnatural presence, the aura attracted the gaze of surrounding monsters. His sister's hands shook as she pleaded softly with her brother, begging him not to frighten her in that way. He watched as the creatures inched nearer, their movements slow and deliberate. He silently cursed to himself, realizing with frustration that they had been seen. He realized there was no other option, so he took hold of her hand and hurried off once more. He quickly sensed that something was amiss. Blocking his way forward, yet another creature loomed in his path. From behind, a second creature appeared, boxing them in with a dangerous pincer movement. His sister's voice trembled as she asked her brother what they should do. Oddly enough, the creatures hesitated to strike, appearing to pause as though anticipating an unseen signal. He tightened his jaw and assured her with his presence, encouraging her not to feel afraid. At that moment, a deafening roar echoed overhead, tearing through the sky. A massive winged beast swooped down, landing with such force that the earth trembled and clouds of dust billowed into the air. Judging by how the rest responded, it was clear this person was in charge. The thought lingered in their minds, questioning if escape was truly impossible on this day. He quickly pulled his sister back into the store, not stopping to think. Inside, waited. There was some relief in knowing that just one waited inside. The world beyond those walls posed even greater threats. They realized their only option was to risk everything and confront it themselves. He seized a wooden stick and rushed forward, convinced that, despite its aggression, it was nothing more than a crazed dog. In the blink of an eye, the stick broke cleanly into two pieces. The beast let out a thunderous roar and charged ahead. He realized, to his surprise, that its strength far exceeded what he had anticipated. With every ounce of strength in his arms and one leg, he battled to pry the creature's jaws open, driven by pure desperation. An arrow suddenly shot forward, striking directly into its single, glaring eye, marking the moment of the narrator's complete disappearance. She rushed in, breathless, clutching a bow she had managed to find at the supermarket. Concern filled her eyes as she searched her brother's face for any sign of injury, her words unspoken but clear. She had come to help, even though she hadn't been able to find a gun. He assured her that he was all right and praised her efforts, forcing a smile despite the anxiety rising within him. As the unforgiving creature, driven by revenge, turned away from him and lunged toward his sister. She whirled around and dashed away as his voice echoed behind her, warning not to turn around no matter what. At this point, his mutation was rapidly getting worse. At the worst possible moment, it was happening now. His sister lost her balance and fell, leaving her vulnerable as the enormous, savage dog closed in on her without hesitation. A sudden surge of anger overwhelmed him, causing him to unleash a furious roar as he slammed his fist into the nearby wall, shattering it and sending steel bars protruding through the rubble. Driven by desperation, he launched the massive piece of wall ahead of him. The object struck the other person directly on the head with a forceful impact. He resolved that anyone who tried to hurt his sister would not live to tell the tale. Driven by anger, he attacked the creature relentlessly, his fists striking with the force of a raging tempest. Terrified, his sister hurried to his side and held onto him tightly. She looked at her brother with terror, begging him to stop whatever was overtaking him. Though she insisted she was all right, her pleas grew more desperate as his wild behavior filled her with fear. Her voice, shaky but determined, managed to reach him at last. He snapped back to reality, breathing heavily and assured that she was all right now, expressing regret for having frightened him. His sibling looked at him with concern, questioning if he truly felt all right. He started to speak, but was interrupted before he could get the words out. A second creature emerged, towering menacingly just at her back. With a burst of force, he pushed out of the way, urgently warning of impending danger. A mutated bird-like creature dove toward them, its twisted form casting a shadow as it attacked. He grabbed an iron rod that was close by and used all his might to swing it. The speaker glared at the bird, warning it to keep its distance from their sister, while insulting its appearance. He stared in disbelief as the monstrous bird toppled over, completely thrown off balance. In that instant, he realized the strength within him might truly be enough to overcome these creatures. He couldn't explain the reason, yet the truth was clear. His strength had increased. He glanced at his sister, urging her to find a safe hiding spot while he prepared himself to take on their attackers. His expression grew tense with concern, yet she understood the reality of the situation. A larger threat had noticed them, and he was forced to draw it away to keep them safe. Fearful, she held onto him tightly, her body shaking. In her heart, she silently begged him not to leave, afraid that he might lose control once more. He softly rested his hand on her head, assuring her that she didn't need to be afraid. This time, he promised to remain in control. Her voice wavered as unshed tears filled her eyes. Before she could finish, he interrupted with a steady command, telling her to remain where she was and promising that he would return for her soon. Despite her hesitation, she gave a small nod, silently forming a promise within herself. In her heart, she wished he would also assure her that he would return unharmed. The listener was reminded that their brother could always be relied upon. He moved forward, leaving the cover behind and entering the open space. He suspected that slaying the creatures and taking in their red energy would allow him to become more powerful. The character noticed that their opponents seemed to be brimming with energy. They believed that defeating this foe would grant them the strength needed to safeguard their family. Driven by desperation, they resolved to eliminate their adversary for the sake of their loved ones. Rather than approaching himself, the leader commanded a group of smaller creatures to attack first, his lips curling in a sneer. The message was clear. He still did not consider the challenger important enough to face directly. The group planned to eliminate every single one, until only the speaker remained to confront their opponent face to face. He let out a fierce roar as he swung his weapon downward, delivering a powerful blow that crashed directly onto the monster's skull. In the blink of an eye, a second creature sprang forward and bit down hard on his shoulder. A surge of strength coursed through him as he let out a thunderous roar, sending two monsters flying backward from the force. His arms contorted, transforming into fierce, clawed appendages as dark and red energy surged across them. He realized that this was the sensation of true strength, astonishing and exhilarating. From that moment forward, he knew the hunt belonged to him. At that moment, a military jet thundered overhead, its deafening roar slicing through the sky. A sudden explosion erupted as a bomb descended from the sky. The leader of the beasts responded by unleashing a thunderous roar that echoed through the air. A powerful blast echoed through the air as thick smoke surged upward toward the sky. Despite all efforts, nothing had changed. Both he and the monster remained unharmed, each standing firm in the aftermath. He responded by unleashing a thunderous roar himself. With a sudden surge of energy, he lunged onto the battlefield, unleashing a relentless assault upon his enemies. At this point, his appearance showed clear signs of exhaustion and defeat. As his thoughts became less clouded, his sister was the first person to come to his mind. All that remained from was a simple cloth doll. Gradually, the traces of mutation disappeared from his body. He realized he had lost his sister and felt a wave of guilt for not arriving sooner. Worry filled him as he wondered where she could be. Feeling a deep sense of guilt, the character wondered if they had disappointed their parents as well, believing they had failed to protect her. A hazy memory resurfaced in his mind at the instant when the bombers roared across the sky above him. As he gazed down at his own distorted, unnatural hands, a sense of dread constricted his chest. Confusion and fear swirled in his mind as he tried to understand what had happened to his hands and what was happening to him. Explosions drew nearer, tightening their grip on the surroundings. He had called out too, urging him to keep his distance because the situation was far too perilous. Suddenly, a thunderous explosion erupted, overwhelming all that was around. Despite the persistent ringing filling his ears, he managed to distinguish the steady beat of helicopter blades overhead. The soldiers nearby quickly noticed someone was still alive. They moved in to inspect him, soon realizing he had been infected. Without hesitation, they decided to abandon him and moved on. He quickly pointed out a girl across the room and ordered someone to take her away without delay. The group moved quickly, aware that the monsters could return at any moment. He stood frozen, powerless to do anything as the helicopter lifted her into the sky and whisked her out of sight. Despite the weight of hopelessness pressing down on him, a tiny sense of relief lingered in his heart. Was out of danger, and that was all that mattered. The character wondered desperately why her brother had not come to rescue her. Within his dream, appeared surrounded by roaring fire. As he extended his hand toward her, she disappeared without a trace. He suddenly sprang up from his sleep, heart racing, as he realized it had just been a bad dream. Once again, that familiar dream haunted them, leaving a frustrated thought lingering. Had been gone for 6 months, and they still wondered desperately where she could be. Fortunately, no one had discovered who he truly was. After disappeared, he visited one shelter after another, hoping to find her, but she was still nowhere to be found. In his determination to find her, he had joined the border patrol, starting at the very bottom of the military hierarchy. Within the turmoil of this world, only the military possessed the power to collect information and travel without restrictions. He was currently assigned to the remote frontier outpost known as City. The crew member apologized to the captain for arriving late to their shift. Captain Jun welcomed him with a swift kick to his rear, expressing clear frustration. She demanded to know where he had been, accusing him of slacking off once again. Annoyed, she reminded him that she had asked him to take over, but he had arrived late. In her eyes, he was nothing more than a worthless newcomer. Yen apologized to the captain as he hurried up the steps of the watchtower. Down below, the captain called out once more, reminding Yen that everything would be finished once the important guests showed up. He asked if Yen understood. Yen responded that he did, but the captain's tone grew sharp as he warned that any mistakes would come with serious consequences. 6 months earlier, a red mist swept across the land, destroying countless cities and transforming them into lairs for monstrous creatures. At the same time, an enigmatic tower emerged, its scarlet form looming over the devastation. The people who survived were forced to take refuge on the distant edges, as living near the tower or within the fog meant certain doom. His mind wandered to memories of the terrifying creature he had encountered at the supermarket, wondering if it was still lurking there. At the same time, Captain grumbled to himself, doubting the effectiveness of their border patrol. He considered that if the elite response team could not secure the area, ordinary soldiers like them stood little chance of success. The other 2 soldiers let out dismissive laughs, clearly unconvinced by the captain's concerns. In their minds, the idea of the renowned response squad being defeated was utterly ridiculous, something they could only consider as a joke. Without pausing for even a moment, the group had defeated every beast that tried to block their path. Yin Hao remained silent on the watchtower, unsettled by the lingering odor of the crimson mist that still turned his stomach. The haze seemed to awaken a savage urge for violence, pushing beasts and men alike to turn against each other. Without warning, he observed the fog begin to move, breaking apart in an eerie, unnatural way. Something was pushing its way through the barrier. A crew member alerted the captain to an approaching presence, pointing it out with concern. Uncertainty about what it might be filled the air, but the captain quickly urged everyone to remain calm and not give in to fear. Before the sentence could be completed, the fog erupted with sudden force as the response squad revealed themselves to the captain. 2 members of the squad dashed frantically, their movements mirroring a fierce contest with the encroaching mist. The group called out to their leader, anxious and confused about what had just occurred outside. Before anyone could react, terrified screams suddenly echoed around them, shattering the tense silence. Captain Jun seized his radio and shouted an urgent command, ordering every unit to withdraw and fall back immediately. In the blink of an eye, a sharp claw snagged the fabric of the captain's uniform. Without warning, the force hoisted him high above the ground. All color drained from his face as fear took hold. He felt certain that the end had come, almost imagining his ancestors beckoning him to join them. From her vantage point above, Yin Hao gazed downward, watching as a red mist engulfed the earth beneath her. Through the thick haze, she could hear nothing but frantic screams and desperate shouts urging people to flee before whatever was approaching arrived. Without a moment's pause, he sprang downward. With a powerful force, the character collided headlong with the creature, forcing it down and grinding it into the earth. There is no script content provided to rewrite. A different creature bellowed at him with intense anger. He had changed so much in just 6 months, shaped by 8G, and everything he had gone through, all arriving unexpectedly in his life. Accepting it all, he made his choice. Within seconds, the second creature collapsed, its life force transferring into him. Feeling a surge of power, the character realized that absorbing the energy had restored their strength. They wondered to themselves how many more absorptions it would take before they advanced to the next level. 6 additional monsters surrounded him, narrowing the space and cutting off any chance of escape. Excitement, rather than fear, brightened his expression as he silently urged himself not to fail. In the blink of an eye, the situation shifted dramatically. A brilliant flash shot behind him, instantly reducing the surrounding creatures to scattered fragments. A woman stood confidently at the scene, clutching a weapon as she openly claimed the creatures he had been hunting. Her name was Song-Ru, the leader in charge of the Crimson Squad. Yin silently cursed to herself, frustrated that someone from the response squad was involved. He hoped she hadn't seen anything, and hurried to change back as quickly as possible. Song-Ru spoke with a tone as icy and cutting as a blade, issuing a merciless command for complete annihilation, insisting that not a single enemy be spared. Both gun barrels turned in his direction. Caught off guard, he immediately raised his hands in surprise. Despite the echo of gunfire, Yin Hao soon understood that he was not the intended victim. The bullets tore into the monstrous creature looming behind him, making him realize he had been worrying for nothing. The target was identified and swiftly taken out. Song-Ru gazed down at him from her elevated position, her eyes searching for the weapon a patrol soldier should possess. A wave of dread washed over Yin as he realized his predicament, certain he was in trouble. Despite his fear, he couldn't help but notice how striking she appeared. All available squads retreated toward the makeshift defensive line. The soldiers knew not to advance unless Commander Song gave explicit instructions. Song-Ru examined the figures displayed on her tablet, her tone devoid of emotion as she processed the information. The report showed 37 casualties at the Zone outpost. Of those lost, 2 belonged to the Crimson Blood Squad while 30 served in the patrol unit. This was the official record of losses resulting from the recent event. Voiced his frustration, insisting that he, too, was a victim and questioning the reason for his detention. At the age of 17 years and 23 days, the individual departed from their assigned unit without permission and was absent for 2 hours. The crimson mist outbreak started immediately following their return. The group waited expectantly, clearly wanting to hear his reasons and feeling that he owed them some sort of explanation. Yin silently cursed, realizing that the woman was far too perceptive for comfort, and decided that pretending confidence was his only way to escape the situation. The character admitted to having drifted off to sleep near some ruins, a location they had already mentioned to their captain before leaving. One of his teammates wasted no time in betraying him, quickly pointing out to their superior that he was always late whenever they had to report for duty, and that the captain consistently overlooked his tardiness. Yen's anger flared as he glared, his voice trembling with rage while he warned against accusing the captain unfairly. He threatened to kill anyone who tried, his fury unmistakable. Song-Ru narrowed her eyes, her mind working through the possibilities. She realized that the problems within this patrol unit ran much deeper than she had initially assumed. At that moment, the captain, who remained in the middle of his medical care, let out a booming sneeze. Someone nearby glanced over and expressed concern for the captain's well-being. A doctor, sounding uninterested, assured them that the captain's life wasn't in danger. According to the doctor, all of his vital signs were stable. Another person questioned if the doctor truly considered those conditions to be normal. Song-Ru accessed file, her voice cold and emotionless. The record indicated that had finished basic training just 3 months earlier. Despite this, during the most recent battle, 2 members from her special response squad had been killed, while had made it out alive. Yen froze in place, his mind racing to come up with a reason. Deep down, fear of death gripped him tightly. During his school days, he had been a member of the track team, so his speed outmatched that of his peers. When the mysterious mist appeared, he had been the first to flee. The question arose, challenging the others' motives. If fear of dying weighed so heavily, what would drive someone to join the military? Perhaps, the inquiry implied, there was another reason behind the decision. For 6 months, his quest for gave him direction. During this time, he hunted and absorbed lesser beasts, gradually mastering his beastly form and eventually figuring out how to return to his human appearance. He kept to himself, steering clear of others as he sifted through abandoned buildings and visited survivor camps each day, always hoping to find her. The speaker explained that, for a soldier, being a coward meant abandoning one's duty and hiding the truth. They reminded the listener that there was a known punishment for such actions. His lips curled into a smug grin as he wondered aloud if someone was considering carrying out his execution. Without warning, Song-Ru moved in, speaking softly right next to Yin's ear. She quietly questioned him about his hands, curious about what they were. The shock made Yin's heart skip. The speaker questioned the other person's motives, wondering what secrets they were trying to keep hidden beneath all the lies and what their true intentions really were. A sudden, deafening crash echoed from outside at that instant. Song-Ru initially mistook the sensation for an earthquake, but a chilling realization struck her. This was a feeling she recognized all too well. He sprang to his feet, urgently warning everyone about the incoming horde of beasts and telling them to flee. Song-Ru's eyes widened in disbelief, as she realized someone had just attempted to escape right before her. In the blink of an eye, she hurled him to the floor, leaving him stunned and bewildered, as if she hadn't noticed his presence at all. Suddenly, the earth beneath Yen split apart with a forceful eruption. The ground began to crack beneath them, causing panic as someone urged her to slow down, warning that the earth was about to give way and pleading desperately for assistance. All of them, with the exception of Song, crashed to the ground and let out pained groans. Confused, they wondered where they had ended up. Below the surface, complete darkness pressed in from all sides, making it hard to breathe. The lights came on at her command, as she promptly received confirmation of her order. A teammate muttered under his breath, calling a constant source of trouble and insisting that misfortune always followed wherever went. In response, replied in a frosty tone, saying that complaints should be reserved for after they made it out alive. Another person questioned anxiously if meant they were stuck, to which replied with a hint of uncertainty, suggesting the situation was exactly that simple. When the lights burst to life, the group finally saw the reality before them. The twisting passages were not, but instead had been hollowed out by monstrous creatures. The group tried to remain composed, as they quickly inspected every weapon they had on hand. The group was instructed to maintain their formation at all times and to make sure their backs were never left unguarded. Without warning, Yin heard the rush of wind, causing his body to tense in response. She noticed a breeze drifting in from that side and realized that if air could enter, there must be an exit nearby. He decided to investigate and hurried to the spot. As expected, he noticed where the cold air was coming through. One of the soldiers watched him with a mocking expression and thought to himself that Yen was good for nothing, except escaping danger when it arose. A rush of air caught the captain's attention, hinting at an unseen passage, while behind him, Yin remained oblivious to the hungry creature silently approaching, its sharp teeth gleaming in anticipation of a meal. A gunshot rang out, striking the creature and causing it to fall, while nearby, a patrol soldier sank to the ground, overwhelmed by fear. The fluid that these beetles secreted was highly corrosive, making it dangerous for anyone to allow them near. No one was allowed to take a single step unless they had received direct instructions from the leader. Song-Ru spun around with sudden intensity, her eyes fixing on. She silently noted how skilled the patrol soldier was at steering clear of trouble. Determined to get answers, she decided that once they escaped, she would demand an explanation from him. Yin's thoughts raced as he wondered why. If she already knew his secret, she hadn't revealed it yet, and what her true intentions could be. A soft rustling sound began to fill the air, its echoes surrounding the group from every direction. From the shadows, additional creatures appeared, gathering together as they moved through the darkness. A wave of frustration washed over him as he noticed the overwhelming number of enemies. He quickly realized the situation was turning dire. The horde drew nearer, their presence filled with a deadly aura, making it seem as though they were eager to consume their prey whole. Song-Ru and her team wasted no time and unleashed a barrage of gunfire. As they retreated in the other direction, they continued to fire their weapons. Without warning, Yen halted in the middle of his stride. Seeing this, Song-A urgently demanded that he continue walking without hesitation. Yin Hao quietly protested, but the swarm came to a sudden halt. The figure urged everyone to focus on what was in front of them. A gigantic insect towered in front of the group, its form marking it as a dominator-class creature as it drew the red mist into itself. In the following instant, the mist gathered tightly together, forming a radiant sphere of energy. Yin Hao's face grew serious as he regarded the object, aware of its potential danger. Song-Ru lifted her weapon and pulled the trigger, sending a shot forward. At the very moment the creature finished its rush, it unleashed a glowing sphere of energy. A thunderous explosion echoed through the cavern when Song's shots hit the monster directly, sending tremors through the underground chamber. Simultaneously, the sphere of energy shot directly at Song-Ru. In a desperate moment, the narrator urgently called out for Yin to duck. Acting just in time, he sprang forward and drove his fist forcefully into the sphere. Yin Hao Song-Ru began to explain, intending to describe how to absorb the energy, but he interrupted her. He promised that if they survived, he would reveal everything. He suddenly observed that the injury left by Song-Ru earlier was stretching further, tearing open even more along the creature's side. Song-Ru's eyebrows drew together in concern as she realized her own attack had made little impact. She wondered silently if Yin truly had a solution and hoped he would proceed with caution. Yin Hao responded with a confident smirk, showing no fear. He remembered that he had already slain hundreds, perhaps even 1,000, of beasts like this before. Facing a dominator-class creature was nothing unusual for him. The monster ranking started from the weakest and climbed to the most powerful. First came scouts, followed by hounds, then dominators, colossi, and finally, the catastrophic monsters at the very top. With a fierce shout, he hurled himself upward, determined to end his opponent's life. His sharp claws ripped across the creature, leaving a wide, ragged opening in its body. The character wondered how much their power would increase if they managed to absorb the other. Hit the ground with force, his face twisted in a look of displeasure. The observer noted with surprise how resilient the creature was, thinking that a normal animal would have already been torn apart by now. The enormous insect hovered above him, its size rivaling that of a battle tank, clear evidence that it had consumed many of its fellow creatures. The enormous bug stood its ground, refusing to retreat. It struck back fiercely, yet slipped aside effortlessly, taunting it for its sluggishness. He understood that the creature had devoted all its energy to protecting itself. The fact that it only increased the risk simply turned the person into an easier target on the move. The other soldiers stood frozen in disbelief, gazing at him as though they couldn't trust their own eyes. The outcast they'd always picked on had been concealing incredible strength all along. A wave of confusion washed over her as she tried to comprehend his identity. It seemed impossible, considering he was known as the fastest runner around and was more afraid of dying than anyone else. At that moment, the turmoil was interrupted by Song Ru, whose presence demanded attention. He was known as a covert combat experiment created by the SU United government in secrecy. The soldier who had taken 3 months to complete basic training was the same one who always led the pack during runs. He was, in fact, an experimental weapon created to fight against the beasts. This was the reality of his existence. It became clear that the captain had known the truth from the beginning. However, the captain only truly realized it when the soldier had stepped in to protect him from a beast's attack. Crimson Blood's vice-captain, Young, found his thoughts spinning as he wondered if the clan had performed experiments like this before, or if perhaps Captain Song was keeping secrets of her own. He managed to break free from the laboratory and blended in with the border patrol. The incident with the red mist had occurred soon after. A troubling thought lingered. Was he the cause of it all? She couldn't dismiss the possibility, which was exactly why she needed to look into it further. The information in question was among the most highly classified secrets within SU. She made it clear that anything witnessed or overheard in this room must never be discussed elsewhere. The others nodded in agreement, with one person responding respectfully. Meanwhile, Song Ru secretly found it amusing how easily everyone believed her made-up explanation. The enormous bug collected one more glowing ball of energy. The object flew directly toward Yin, but he effortlessly dodged out of its path. His heart sank in surprise. The sphere suddenly changed direction, heading straight for Song Yi and her team, forcing them to move quickly out of its path. A powerful explosion struck the earth, causing the cavern to tremble from the force. As the dust settled, Song Ru remained upright and unharmed, striking a pose that radiated an almost exaggerated sense of heroism. His comrades struggled to catch his breath, wide-eyed with disbelief that he had survived. Had stepped in to protect him, drawing attention to the injury on his leg. Young maintained a calm demeanor, confident that a relaxed attitude wouldn't be his downfall. He recognized the difference between himself and those in the elite response team. As a simple patrol officer, he felt the gap in status. Despite this, Young offered a gentle smile, believing that sacrificing a leg in exchange for survival was a fair trade. Despite knowing his duty was to eliminate the beasts, she wondered why he would risk weakening himself on her behalf. Young stood resolute, his purpose clear. He had not joined the ranks of soldiers simply to destroy the terrifying monsters that threatened them. Instead, his true motivation was to defend others. As the last line of defense for humanity, he refused to leave anyone behind. Such dedication, he believed, was truly deserving of admiration. Simultaneously, is forcefully thrown across the air and crashes onto the ground, landing with a series of loud, jarring thumps. The crimson armor covering his arms shimmered briefly before vanishing, leaving him frustrated as the scarlet mist's power ebbed away. He realized he couldn't even manage to keep one arm transformed into its beastly form. Despite the intense assault, the Dominator-class steel plate-spiked beetle continued to display remarkable energy. Witnessing this resilience, it became clear just how formidable and difficult to handle a Dominator-class creature truly was. The creature sprang forward, its sharp claws sweeping through the air as it attacked him. At that moment, a sudden laser shot struck the creature squarely in the head. Yinhao spun around while Song Ru remained motionless, her weapon still emitting smoke. Yin heard her icy words as she informed him that he wouldn't be dying there. She insisted he had many things left to explain. The steel-plated beetle emitted a twisted laugh that sounded both grotesque and taunting. Song Ru squinted, suspicion flickering in her gaze as she noticed the creature was actually laughing. She wondered if her suspicions could possibly be true. As expected, waves of red mist swept in from each surrounding passageway, guided effortlessly by the maze's design. The labyrinth allowed the mist to move with absolute precision. As the mist poured in again, the creature's injuries closed swiftly, its power returning in a sudden rush. The entity rapidly regained its full strength, revealing that the mysterious mist at the previous outpost had been its work from the very beginning. Song-Ru acted quickly, her expression firm as she recognized they stood no chance of defeating the creature. Without hesitation, she signaled for everyone to fall back immediately. Yinhao summoned his remaining strength and declared with determination that the threat would end that day. He realized that the mist, which the enemy had called forth, was now empowering him as well. Noting that the creature could no longer move as it wished, he understood this was the perfect moment for them to attack. Song-Ru responded with a chilling tone, warning that failure would mean certain death for the other person. Smiled confidently, unfazed by the danger, as if previous brushes with death had left him fearless and undeterred by the prospect of facing it again. Upon hearing that, Song realized that a razor-sharp weapon was their only hope, and understood they had just one chance to succeed. With determination, the character prepared to use all their power to break through the creature's head armor, planning to leave the final blow to their companion, who would be tasked with crushing its brain. They realized that was the sole method to defeat it. Song let out a fierce roar just as the laser cannon unleashed its blast, while sprang into motion right next to the weapon. The explosion shattered the beetle's reinforced steel defenses, cracking its protective shell just wide enough for Hao to slip through. He sprang up and landed squarely atop the creature's head. His claws pounded furiously, accompanied by a thunderous roar demanding his opponent's demise. Battered by the constant barrage, the protective plates on the monster's head started to split open. Song-Ru's eyes widened as she held her breath, silently wondering if her attempt had succeeded. A thunderous explosion erupted as the steel-plated beetle's head shattered, sending fragments scattering through the air, while was hurled backward and hit the ground hard with a heavy thud. Song hurried across it without hesitation. She dropped to her knees beside him, concern etched on her face as she checked if he was okay. Her gaze landed on an object resting against his chest. She lifted the object and studied the photograph with a troubled expression. At the same time, she failed to see the black crystal that had silently formed in his palm. The crystal gradually disappeared into the center of his hand. Sight faded to black, and in an instant he found himself transported to an unfamiliar and mysterious place. He quietly wondered if he had died. In front of him, an object resembling a twisting DNA helix glowed with an unsettling, otherworldly light. A dim light shimmered from within his chest as the black crystal emerged once more. Yinhao suddenly felt his heart race as he realized this was the very item that had come from within the Dominator-class beast. The strange energy cord, which the character clearly remembered holding in their hand, had somehow become embedded in their chest, leaving them confused about how it got there. The strange entity began drawing in the crimson mist, leaving onlookers stunned by its ability to absorb the swirling red haze. The power wasn't only being absorbed, it was also being stored inside. Now, even if he took in more of the mist and had to keep fighting, he knew he wouldn't lose control again. Suddenly, thin fractures began to spread over the crystal, branching outward like a web. Yinhao felt a sharp pressure in his chest, realizing that the newborn crystal inside him was struggling to contain the growing energy. He worried that if this situation continued, the crystal might burst apart. Unleash the Dominator beetle's most powerful attack, consuming a tremendous amount of crimson mist in a single, devastating blow. The character considered that if absorbing a mist was possible, they would try to collect it all into a single spot. Crimson mist started to emanate from his body as he lay on the hospital bed. His eyes began to shine with a crimson light as he let out a low, menacing growl, commanding the energy to condense. An orb began to take shape in his hands, bearing a striking resemblance to the technique seen in the anime. 5 minutes before, at hospital, events began to unfold. Outside room 324, a fellow member of his team stepped in front of Song-Ru. The comrade addressed her as Captain Song, mentioning Vice Captain's injured leg. Song-Ru responded with determination, assuring him that as a soldier, he understood the dangers involved and that there was no need for self-blame. Inside the room, Young glanced up at her captain. Curiosity filled her expression as she wondered what was happening with Yin and questioned how she had never heard of the creating experimental soldiers. Situation remained a secret, and she insisted that the only priority was getting better. Everything else, she implied in a firm and commanding voice, should be left alone. The transfer request to logistics had already been submitted, ensuring that from that moment on, the individual would finally have the chance to rest as they deserved. Grew quiet for a moment before making up his mind. He decided that he would deliver an honest account of the situation to her father. Believed that Chief of Staff Song Lind would be able to handle the matter with sound judgment. Song-Ru addressed Vice Captain with an icy tone, firmly reminding him of her position of authority. She announced that his communications were now cut off and ordered him to remain where he was, making it clear he would not be allowed to leave. She marched out with a scowl, demanding to know Yin's whereabouts and insisting on being led to room 314. A short time passed before they stood in front of room 314. The order was clear. They were to keep watch, allowing no one to enter unless instructed otherwise. Within the room, as the energy gathered in his hands and shaped itself into an orb resembling a tailed beast bomb, Song-Ru entered at the very moment the power began to pulse with a threatening intensity. Her eyes grew wide with surprise as she wondered in shock what Yin was doing. Urgently commanded everyone to take cover. Realizing he had no alternative, he attempted to break up the force, but the resulting recoil hurled him through the air. Song-Ru's reflexes kicked in immediately. She flattened herself to the ground just as the energy disk whizzed above, darting through the doorway with the speed and sharpness of a flying blade. The soldier assigned to patrol the entrance fell to the ground, overwhelmed by terror. A thunderous explosion rattled the hospital as the disk tore straight through its walls, continuing on and crashing into a second building without losing momentum. When the wave surged outward, it split the third building cleanly down the middle. Vice Captain gazed in shock at the enormous gap in the wall. The deserted structure had been completely blasted open. He wondered if Yen was responsible and questioned inwardly how much longer Captain Song could conceal the incident. The soldier standing guard at the entrance looked like he might burst into tears at any moment. He wondered miserably why he was always the one chosen for situations like this. In his heart, he silently pleaded for someone to rescue him, overwhelmed by a desperate wish to survive. A chill ran down Song-Ru's spine as sweat formed on her forehead. She recognized the move immediately. It was the beetle's technique. Confusion filled her mind as she wondered how Yin could use a beast's power without transforming himself. She spun around abruptly, her gaze locking onto him with intensity, silently reminding Yin that his list of explanations was growing longer by the minute. Soon, the pair found themselves alone atop the hospital's rooftop. Began to explain everything that had happened, leaving nothing out as he recounted the story from start to finish. Song-Ru's face grew serious as she realized what this meant. She understood now. Not only could he absorb beast cores, but he also possessed the power to replicate their abilities. Yin Hao nodded, confirming not only that, but also mentioning his ability to store crimson mist. He noticed that the crystal appeared to have the power to restore itself. Song-Ru rested her hand on her chin, her expression contemplative as she silently observed the impressive array of features before her. Gazed intently at his transformed hand, recognizing that while he had acquired the power and skills of the beasts, he also faced the unsettling possibility of gradually becoming like them. His tone turned sour as he questioned his own humanity, wondering aloud if he could still be considered human under such circumstances. He looked to Captain Song, seeking to know how the captain perceived him. Song-Ru spoke with a steady tone that held a sharp edge. She explained that everyone is unique, and whether someone becomes a human or a monster depends on the choices they make with their abilities. The narrator reminded them that their power could bring both destruction and serve as a tool for battle. At that moment, the speaker presented two possible choices. The first option was to become a reserve member of the Crimson Blood Squad under the speaker's leadership. Next, anyone deemed a danger would be eliminated together with the monsters. Erased Yin let out a low, sinister chuckle, doubting whether the garrison station there truly had the power to accomplish such a feat. Song-Ru looked directly at him, her expression steady. She recognized her current limitations, understanding she wasn't prepared to face him yet. At the same time, she believed that if he thought he could challenge the SU by himself, he was being overconfident. The speaker assured the listener that joining the squad would bring no harm, promising to provide protection, information, and necessary resources. Yin Hao concealed a sneer, thinking to himself that since threats had failed, she was now attempting to negotiate. He knew there was always a catch. No one offered help without expecting something in return. He wondered why she would gamble on someone she barely knew, especially someone unpredictable and possibly hazardous. The cost for such a risk had to be significant. Yin Hao suspected that Song A's intentions went beyond simple recruitment. She surely had another motive driving her actions. Song-Ru's lips curled into a subtle, knowing smile, her keen gaze unwavering. She acknowledged her own need for the other person, hinting that her motives were personal. Despite this, she assured the other that there was no animosity between them. They could consider it a bargain, if that made things easier. She reached into her pocket and gradually drew out a photograph. In-House's expression turned to stone, disbelief washing over them. They couldn't understand how that photograph had ended up in someone else's possession. Song-Ru spoke with a biting edge, making it clear that uncovering someone's history would be effortless if she put her mind to it. She promised that if the listener agreed to join Crimson Blood, she would use her best resources to assist in finding their sister. Found the offer irresistible. He realized that searching by himself could only get him so far. Just as Song-Ru had pointed out, rising in rank within the military would give him access to more areas and allow him to move about with greater freedom. The agreement was made, but the captain's desperation for assistance was clear. Yen scratched his head and pretended not to understand, all the while thinking that a small increase in pay would be helpful, especially since he had already used up his earnings searching for his sister. As the captain of Crimson Blood, he informed Yin, the humble patrol soldier, that she was now being appointed as a reserve member of his squad. He explained that this new position would earn her the highest pay grade, and instructed her to go and complete the necessary paperwork without delay. He acknowledged the instruction respectfully and immediately set off toward the patrol unit, prepared to take care of the transfer. The topic of the hospital damages came up, and it was made clear that although the other person caused the damage, the responsibility for the costs would be taken care of by the speaker. There was no reason to celebrate, as the amount would later be subtracted from their paycheck. Yin Hao's expression stiffened, his face contorting as realization set in. He understood that, no matter what, he would still be responsible for the cost. As Song-Ru watched her uncle walk away, she tightened her fists in determination, silently vowing to herself that she would discover a way to rescue him. She sensed it deep within herself. Yin Hao possessed the unique ability that could restore beasts to their human forms. Within the patrol headquarters of City, Yin Hao entered to check in, accompanied by the same patrol soldier who had escorted him. Yin struggled to understand the situation, his confusion growing until he finally voiced his disbelief, questioning the surprising news that someone else was also becoming a member of the Special Response Team. Captain Song and Deputy held a strong opinion of the narrator's abilities. Even though the narrator worked in logistics, they believed that Brother Yin and they could continue to support and protect one another. Suddenly became aware of an uncomfortable truth. He had never managed to recall this person's name. At that moment, the patrol soldier raised his hand in greeting, revealing himself as captain and showing that he was unharmed. Captain Jia remained rooted to the spot, leaning heavily on his cane, determined to contribute despite his stubborn resolve. However, the atmosphere changed abruptly when a mocking expression sliced through the tension. Commander of City Defense Corps taunted the man, reminding him of a time in the past when he had been slapped over a mute woman. Now, pointed out, the same man was reduced to groveling before the Defense Corps, desperate for compensation for his fallen soldiers. Without warning, drove his foot forcefully into the man's side, asserting his dominance in front of the others. The patrol soldier reached his breaking point and shouted angrily at them, his voice filled with frustration. Yin and the rest stood motionless, stunned as the soldier crashed hard onto the ground. Despite being held down, the soldier clenched his jaw and yelled defiantly, demanding that Captain be released and furiously insulting his captors. Seized Captain's chin, spit directly into his face, and sneered with contempt, demanding that kneel down and clean the mud from his shoes with his tongue. He gestured toward the pin-wearing patrolman and threatened that, unless his demands were met, he would snap the child's arm and use it in place of a cane. Captain gritted his teeth, his inner turmoil clear as he struggled to choose between opposing options. Ultimately, he sank down onto his knees at a gradual pace. Just as his knee was about to touch the ground, Yin Hao swiftly pulled him back to his feet, remembering that this man had once served as his captain. Acknowledged the help received in the past, and expressed a desire to repay that kindness by offering assistance now. Yin Hao's temper flared, and he declared that as long as he remained present, he would not allow anyone to harm Captain. If someone so much as touched the Captain, Yin Hao promised to rip out their bones and use them as fuel for a fire. The men stopped in their tracks, stunned by his boldness. None of them could believe he dared to speak that way, and they silently wondered who he thought he was. The group of 4 advanced together toward, their voices raised in a threatening chorus as they accused him of courting disaster. Yin Hao's expression grew serious as he swiftly lowered himself and shifted into a battle-ready position. He aimed a powerful kick at one of the men, striking him directly on the jaw. His elbow swung forward, connecting with another target and producing a muted thumping sound. He delivered a powerful kick to the third man's thigh, and the sound of bone breaking echoed through the air. The force of his last blow drove deep into the fourth man's stomach. His head was thrown back forcefully, striking the wall behind him. The group of troublemakers hardly posed enough of a challenge to even get started. The group stood their ground, refusing to retreat. One member curled his lip in a mocking sneer, silently boasting about their captain being an E-rank fighter. He seemed to believe that anyone who dared challenge them was asking for trouble. His gaze sharpened with a flash of defiance, though inwardly he reeled in disbelief, astonished by how quickly the young opponent had moved. Swiftly pulled out his gun and challenged the patrol, his voice sharp as he warned them not to oppose the City Defense Corps unless they were ready to face the consequences. In the blink of an eye, deftly dodged 3 shots, his swift movements making it look effortless. At that moment, he swiftly grabbed his gun, silently noting that its reaction had been far too slow. Before had a chance to respond, closed his fingers around the weapon and shattered it effortlessly. He remarked that it was pathetic, not even measuring up to a single % of Song Ru's abilities. However, had no intention of stopping. Without warning, he reached into his jacket and revealed a sharp knife. Just as he prepared to strike, Yin swiftly intercepted the blade, his grip unsteady and his whole hand shaking so much that it seemed he might lose control at any moment. In a swift motion, hoisted him effortlessly above the ground, treating him as if he were nothing more than a plaything. With a chilling tone, reminded him of his earlier words, questioning whether he hadn't just demanded that Captain kneel. His complexion drained of color as he struggled to speak, confusion and fear tightening his voice. He questioned the other person's intentions, demanding to know why they were involved and what they were planning. Desperation crept in as he tried to warn them not to proceed. Rather than backing down, the character continued to challenge their opponent, making it clear that the tables had turned, and now the other person would face the consequences. Forcefully drove into the ground, leaving a noticeable dent in the floor where they landed. Lay stretched out on the ground, temporarily immobilized and unable to get up. The crowd stood motionless, stunned by what they had witnessed. Before their eyes, he had evaded a hail of bullets and effortlessly destroyed a regulation pistol using only his hands. At that instant, Yin became aware that the enhancements from the beast core had made his body stronger than he had ever imagined possible. The rest of the group scattered in fear, their cries about a monster filling the air as they dashed away. Meanwhile, Yin remained composed, stooping to retrieve the cane from the ground. The patrol soldier struck his shoulder with enthusiasm, loudly expressing admiration for his bravery during the recent encounter. glanced at the soldier with a worried expression, asking if he was unhurt. Trying to ease the concern, assured him that he was tough enough to handle any blows. Yin expressed gratitude toward Captain, unsure at first what for. Captain reminded Yin that he had always been there to support him, and now, defending him felt like the least he could do in return. Captain's expression remained tense, her concern evident as she considered the possibility of the City Defense Corps pursuing them. The patrolman struck his own chest with confidence, offering reassurance to Captain. He explained that both he and Yen were now members of a special response unit, making it unlikely that the City Defense Forces would challenge them. The special response team from City had established a temporary base. After finishing the paperwork, Song-Ru announced that the application had been forwarded to headquarters, where it had already received approval. Yin expressed his surprise at how quickly things had happened, realizing he was now officially a member. Song-Ru gave a firm shake of her head, signaling caution to Yin. She silently conveyed that he shouldn't rush ahead, as the true challenge was still waiting for him. They were instructed to proceed at once to the Lake City headquarters in order to participate in the entry assessment for the Special Response Team's Combat Division. Despite the challenge ahead, there was faith in their abilities, a belief that success was well within reach. With determination, they resolved to not only succeed but to break previous records as well. Lake City stood as a highly developed city, renowned for its cutting-edge technology. Yin was headed for that location, where the assessment was scheduled to take place. Song-Ru clarified that they were now in Lake City, which served as the capital of, and also mentioned that its main offices were situated in this very place. Yen, looking confused, gestured toward the patrolman standing nearby. He recalled hearing that official members often looked down on those ranked as D-level fighters, and he wondered how these fighter rankings were determined. He wondered silently how someone so frail could ever hope to pass the assessment. The patrolman forced a nervous chuckle, resigning himself to the idea that he might have to endure another rough encounter. Song-Ru explained that he had chosen to work in logistics rather than the combat unit, which meant he was exempt from participating in any battle evaluations. The patrolman hurried to point out that logistics continued to support the team directly on the field, hinting that everyone would soon be relying on his expertise. Song-Ru continued, taking advantage of the moment to explain things too. She told him that individuals with powers like hers were known as fighters. The organization classified fighter abilities into 6 distinct tiers: E, D, C, B, A, and S. The headquarters relied on a formal assessment system that focused primarily on measuring physical power and stamina. In contrast, beasts were divided into 5 distinct categories: Scout, Hound, Overlord, Giant Beast, and Cataclysm. Most of the time, fighters ranked at D-level are strong enough to defeat a Scout-class beast, meaning their abilities are about the same as those of a Hound-class creature. Meanwhile, C and B-rank fighters have power comparable to Overlord-class beasts. At the top, an A-rank fighter's strength is on par with that of a giant beast. S-ranked fighters were considered equals to the fearsome beasts classified as Cataclysm class. In addition, a person's rank is influenced by how well they can handle beast cores, a concept known as beast core adaptation. In the current state of the apocalypse, the only creatures with natural abilities are animals transformed by the red mist. Humans, on the other hand, must absorb beast cores and use them as weapons if they wish to gain special powers. Success with beast core adaptation depended on factors like physical fitness, natural talent, and even a bit of luck. Those who matched well with their core unlocked more powerful and numerous abilities, but for anyone who couldn't adapt, the best rank they could hope for was E rank. Without warning, the military truck came to an abrupt stop, its tires squealing against the pavement. The officer apologized, explaining that the street ahead was currently restricted due to traffic control, and indicated that travelers would have to find an alternate route. The special response team stood their ground, incredulous that anyone would attempt to obstruct them while they were on assignment. They reminded the others that they, too, were carrying out their duties and warned them not to test their patience. Just as the disagreement seemed ready to escalate, a vehicle bearing a unique emblem raced by. Song-Ru's expression tightened with suspicion as she picked up on an unusual atmosphere. Thoughts raced through her mind about Kai Hui's entrance evaluation, and she couldn't understand why a representative from the corporation would suddenly appear at this place. About an hour afterward, at the location where the entry assessment was being held, a proctor who held the rank of a class fighter within addressed the crowd in a commanding voice. He proclaimed that stood as both the greatest defense and the most formidable weapon among all the special response teams protecting humanity. The speaker made it clear that a person's background did not matter. In this place, everyone was expected to obey the rules. No one could rely on connections or shortcuts in Qi. Only those with true talent managed to remain. Without real skill, staying was impossible. The first stage, known as the physical assessment, was about to commence. Yin charged ahead in the 100-meter sprint, carrying 50 kilograms of extra weight. He surged past all his competitors, moving with the speed and force of a launched rocket. In a blur, he crossed the finish line far ahead of the others, completing the race in an astonishing 5.1 seconds. The electromagnetic kettlebell, weighed down for testing, stood ready. With remarkable strength, managed to hoist 500 kilograms using just one hand. Thrust his fist ahead, demonstrating his striking power. Upon impact, the device broke apart, rendering it useless. The system responded with a notification, stating that the test equipment was too damaged to provide any measurements. 10 minutes past before arrived in front of, offering a respectful salute and informing him that every test had been finished. Gave a nod to show agreement, silently acknowledging that the score had reached 198 points. The other candidates stared in disbelief. Scoring 198 points seemed impossible when the rookie record stood at just 140. Many of them silently accused him of cheating, convinced that his chances were now ruined. At that moment, Jin, known as the younger brother of the Defense Corps captain from City, moved ahead and raised a question. He directed his attention to Instructor, remarking that the greatest number of points ever achieved by a rookie was 140. They found it hard to believe that his score had now exceeded the previous record. Doubt lingered in their mind. Squinted sharply at glare after delivering a shot. He asserted that he had overseen each test himself, emphasizing that every moment had been recorded on video. He then questioned whether she was implying that he had shown favoritism. Jin quickly waved his hands to assure them that he was only curious and meant no offense. Jin moved past Yen, his tone icy as he demanded to know if Yen belonged to the city patrol. Without showing any emotion, Yen replied, questioning why it mattered. Inside, Yen wondered why a stranger he had never met was already trying to start trouble with him. Jin flashed a friendly smile, assuring the others that he only wanted to greet them, reminding everyone that they all shared the same. Though he maintained a calm exterior, inside he seethed with contempt. He silently vowed that the shame his brother had endured would be avenged, and that the one responsible would suffer twice as much in return. Dismissed the idea with silent irritation, feeling no connection just because they shared a. Quickly explained that the person was Jin, who happened to be the son of the Defense Corps captain in City. Hearing this, Yin furrowed his brows, realizing that the man indeed belonged to the City Defense Corps. Its main city defenders were deeply corrupt, their actions showing just how rotten their leadership had become. Proceeded to reveal the rankings from the physical examinations, starting with the 30th spot. San had earned 89 points, securing that position. Moving up the list, the 29th place was next to be announced. Jin earned 3rd place with a total of 123 points. Jin secured 2nd place by scoring 135 points. Claiming the top position, Yin finished first with an impressive 198 points. Jean, who held a senior position at the Technical Intelligence Bureau, reflected on her reasons for attending the assessment. She hadn't expected much, believing she was there just for amusement. However, the appearance of a remarkably talented newcomer caught her attention, piquing her curiosity. She resolved to observe and analyze this individual more closely. 15 contestants were left. The following challenge was called the Beast Core Adaptation. At the same time, in a small dormitory, Jin sat with his tablet, his irritation clear as he spoke to someone over a video call. He resented not claiming the top spot, never expecting that 2 extraordinary competitors would appear. The individual on the line responded with a frosty tone. making it clear that, were it not for the brothers' eagerness to please corporation, there would be no chance of qualifying for the assessment at all. A single opportunity presented itself, and it was crucial not to squander it. Jin gritted his teeth, silently vowing to enter Chi for the sake of his brother. At the center of B's testing facility, every candidate stood quietly, anticipating what would come next. Explained the task, telling everyone that the test would be easy and that all they needed to do was wear the wrist guard. Next, the beast core needed to be set on the platform to start the examination. Anyone whose compatibility falls under 40% faces immediate disqualification. For those still uncertain, an explanation about beast cores follows. Beast cores are produced exclusively by creatures ranked as hound class or above. The power and quality of a core increase with the strength of the beast it comes from. Gold-grade cores are the most difficult to find, whereas black cores, which are harvested from hound-class beasts, appear most frequently. When fighters embed these cores into their beast armaments, they gain the power to utilize abilities similar to those of the creatures themselves. Every individual's connection to a core is unique to them. Together with their natural gifts, this connection shapes the special powers that emerge within them. Abilities could include mastery over elements, immense physical power, providing assistance, or exerting influence over others. The wrist guards in question represented the simplest form of beast armaments, designed solely to test compatibility rather than to provide any special powers. Upon officially becoming a member of the Kai Combat Division, individuals would receive more advanced beast cores and superior armaments. The procedure to test beast core compatibility commenced. The initial applicant failed to meet expectations, achieving a score of just 39% and was promptly disqualified. He refused to believe what was happening. It just didn't make sense to him. As someone who was ranked 5th in physical strength, he wondered how this situation could possibly be more difficult than defeating a wild beast. The following candidate reached a score of 56% and burst out in joyful celebration, thrilled to have passed and eager to become part of Kai. It was now Jin's chance to act. Jin cast a chilling glance at the proctor, his lips curling into a sneer. He quickly grabbed a core from a black ray beast. With a sudden, forceful motion, the object struck the wrist guard, producing a loud, crisp sound. His features contorted in anger while he demanded obedience. Within a heartbeat, the outcome appeared. Drank had a 60% compatibility score. The audience let out a collective gasp of surprise. They couldn't believe it. Last year's best newcomer had only managed a 56% score. Yet Jin had just surpassed that record. People immediately started calling him the most powerful newcomer of the year. Jin hid his disdain, certain that none of those around him measured up. In his mind, he stood above them all as the unrivaled best. The room filled with the lively hum of people talking. At that moment, Jin Ning emerged behind Yen, noting that he was from city and wondering aloud why she had never heard of such a powerful fighter like him before. As the all-seeing eye of the Technical Intelligence Bureau, he prided himself on his vigilance, yet someone had managed to evade his watchful gaze. It was clear to him that this person was far from ordinary. The unusual red mist that had appeared in city recently came to mind, and suspicion grew that it might have been related to Yin. Sensing the tension, Yin immediately feigned ignorance, acting as if he had no idea what was being implied, and insisting he didn't understand anything about the situation. Jining let out a soft laugh, unconcerned by any attempts at denial. He believed that was irrelevant. What truly mattered in his mind was making it clear that his curiosity about the other person ran deep. Yin Hao noticed an opportunity and decided to approach the person known for her knowledge, hoping she would be willing to share some information with him. Lifted a single finger, signaling her agreement, but made it clear she would only comply if her own requirement was met. If their test scores were higher than his, he would be willing to share any information they wished to learn. She moved closer and stressed the importance of anything whatsoever. Jean was called to the stage, prompting a ripple of excitement to sweep through the audience as she made her entrance. Jining stepped confidently onto the platform, announcing to the crowd that they should pay attention because Jin's record was about to fall by her hand. Yen questioned in her mind whether the girl truly possessed such strength, while Jin secretly mocked her, thinking she was nothing more than a pitiful fool. Jining stood tall, exuding a quiet assurance that radiated from her every move. She lifted a member of the Black Raid Beast Corps. With a sudden, crisp sound, she firmly pushed the object against the protective wrist guard. In the blink of an eye, the screen glowed brightly, revealing the words, B-Rank Fighter, 78% compatibility. Shock and disbelief swept through the group of candidates. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Such a result was almost impossible. Whispers raced among them, insisting that the machine must be working correctly. Jeannie let out a playful laugh, her eyes sparkling with mischief. The speaker confidently reminded everyone that they had promised to surpass Jin's record, and now they had done exactly that. Jin clenched his jaw with such force that his teeth were on the verge of breaking. In his mind, he seethed with determination, vowing not to spare either Yen or the troublesome woman who had angered him. The final candidate took a moment to consider his abilities, realizing she might have been telling the truth about her impressive strength and experience. Suddenly, appeared before him, a confident grin on her face, and challenged him by asking if he was starting to feel the pressure. For Yin, the stakes were high because his whereabouts depended on the outcome of this gamble. Determined to succeed, he focused intently as he made his move. Without another word, he spun around and walked away, the onlookers left with nothing but the impressive image of his retreating figure. Song-Ru believed that held at least a C rank as a fighter. The beast core standing in front of him matched the black grade he had previously assimilated. The question arose about what his level of compatibility might be. They urged the others to watch and find out just how much ability he truly possessed. In the following moment, the display illuminated, revealing the words, C rank. The candidates gazed in disbelief, their eyes wide with surprise. They realized that beginning at C rank was typically reserved for squad leaders. Suddenly, piercing alarms erupted from the display, signaling a system malfunction as it attempted to read the Beast Corps' compatibility. Yin sensed a sudden unease, as if a cold wave swept over him, alerting him that something was amiss. A short time afterward, the system displayed the outcome. Their compatibility stood at 0%.